I want to talk a little further about this concept of vulnerability, which tends to be a elusive concept for a lot of men to grab a hold of. And a lot of times it's very frustrating, challenging, and to a degree even threatening. And that kind of trickles over into the gay community as well, where men in general in society have been taught in a lot of cultures to have it together, to be the strong stoic type that takes care of the family, that has doesn't cry, doesn't show any emotion, is really strong to be there for the family. And unfortunately, this kind of gets carried over to the kids as well, where we pick up as men what seems to be the cultural way to be as men. And it becomes really problematic if you are someone who actually has a little bit more of a feminine side, who has more of a mannerism, or maybe not having that masculine demeanor. It becomes something like you have to put up this front to kind of protect against other people who might want to tear that down. And in dating and situations, relationships, making friendships in the community, this really plays out as well because it becomes like a pecking order where the more desirable types of men are going to be those ones who actually have those characteristics, unfortunately. And why is it so important that you be vulnerable? Because we kind of sometimes associate this, for right or wrong, with women. Women seem to have a more easy time. Now, I'm being stereotypical because this is not covering all women, of course. But they seem to kind of lean more into having that ability to connect and let people in, display emotion, really get in touch with feelings and stuff like that. And this is something that becomes really kind of threatening for us. And to be honest, it's been threatening for me as well. Um, Having grown up in a single family home in a wealthy suburb of the city of Chicago, it was really hard to be someone who I had more feminine types of demeanor, unfortunately. Not necessarily unfortunately, but it was just something that kids picked up on. And I had to have this guard to protect myself. And so growing up with that degree, it created shame. It created a sense of embarrassment. It was hard to make friends because I just stood out like a sore thumb. And going into my adult years, going into job interviews, for example, going into work scenarios, trying to make friends, I found myself really trying to put up a front where I wasn't letting people in, or I was trying to like kind of make up something for myself. And I look back and people would tell me that, David, of course you were gay. We all knew it. But inside you don't always feel that. You're just like trying to just protect yourself against the world. And carrying this forward into day-to-day relationships and meeting people and connecting on dating sites, making friends in the community, vulnerability is really the entryway into a meaningful connection with anyone. You cannot bond or be friends for a really long time with someone who's just fake, who is just not like letting you in. Now, I'm not saying you have to like throw it all up, like I've said before, but to a degree, you have to let enough people into seeing who you are that you can actually bridge that understanding that you are someone that they might want to get to know. And I'm going to give like an example. A couple of years ago, I was in a work situation. I was on a team call, and there were a lot of people on this call. And I remember it was just a year or two out of the pandemic. And I know I was feeling a little like lost. We're kind of bringing different groups together, and I didn't know a lot of the people there, and it was a little bit of a threatening situation. There's probably maybe 50 plus people more on that call, and we had our cameras on. And I remember, to a degree, I did not have my camera on because I am not going to put my camera on. I am not going to show my face on there because I don't feel like I belong here. For whatever reason, I was just feeling really, really like vulnerable. I guess that's the way to say it. If I was feeling vulnerable, I wanted to be protected, and I did not want to participate in the activities at all that they were doing in the Zoom chat. And there came a point where I had to ask a question because I felt like I needed to talk about something that was going on in me. And I wanted to speak something out that I felt like men were dealing with in particular, that they were struggling with, because we're coming out of the pandemic and there was this sense of isolation, sadness. People were dealing with depression and changes and loneliness because they've been at home. And I just had to say, I feel a little out of the water. I'm struggling, and I feel like men sometimes don't know how to articulate this. And I can't remember the whole full thing that I said, but whatever I said and however I said it resonated with everyone on that call. I got so many messages about it. I got so many people telling me how much they thanked me for my honesty and my vulnerability to actually put a finger on something that everyone was dealing with, not just men, women as well. This idea of connecting and not being able to really be their authentic selves in this situation. And what it did was it brought people together closer. And for me in particular, because I was a person who was sharing something that was like feeling tender in me, and I was feeling stupid too. And I even said I wasn't even on my camera. I didn't want to be on my camera. I was practically wanting to leave the call. And having disclosed all of that, people were just, all of a sudden, they saw me in a different light. And I feel like we always have these scenarios available to us. We can't always control how or where they're going to show up. But you may be in a situation where you are at a party, at a social situation, having coffee with somebody, and somehow you're going to find yourself being honest and vulnerable with somebody. I'm going to give another example. For about 1 year, I decided I was going to send personal video messages to people for their birthday. I was zealous about it. I was going to do everyone and Facebook on their day of their birthday. And, after a while getting in, I started really with a lot of gusto in January and then into February. And then it kind of petered out a little bit into March and had a little resurgence back in the summer. But it was such a scary thing for me to do, to record video messages, because I was allowing myself to be personal with somebody. I was sharing something that I had noticed in them. I was paying them a compliment perhaps on something. I had maybe had some observations from just seeing them from afar, either admiration or something that I really came to value in them in the community where I live. And I shared this, and it was about a minute or two, maybe about a minute and a half that I shared. And sometimes it was really scary to do that because it was vulnerable. It was like something like, who does that? And a lot of times I'm like, I don't even necessarily know these people very well, but I know them as acquaintances. And I had to tell you, when I did that, what it did for them and what it did for me was transformational. It was something that brought me, not only like it brought me closer to those people, but it also changed my level of confidence and belief in myself in a strange way. And it somehow it connected me with them. And to this day, the folk, not everybody responded. Some people just, because spam and stuff like that, is this a real message? I got a lot of that too. And some people don't know what to do with it. And there was like reactions. But the people who actually responded and were really moved by it, it did something in that transaction, in that video message. In the way I was able to connect on something that I was feeling. It was scary, but I was able to reach out and let myself be seen and really show them that I was seeing them as well. And there was this phrase that intimacy stands for into you I see, into me you see. And it's like when we see each other this way, that is the key to achieving a sense of vulnerability. And in the community where there's a hesitancy to get close, where there is a hesitancy to really reveal who your real self is, it's really challenging. And when you can't connect, and when you have that barrier that's up, it creates a degree of despair in people where they feel sad and they feel like no one wants to know them, and they keep putting up a front. And then sadly, people become a little disconnected, and sometimes they wonder why they're there. And if you're feeling that way, I want to encourage you to definitely talk with somebody. And if you feel that way, you should also maybe perhaps look into maybe seeing someone professionally. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist or anything like that. I'm just sharing from my heart things that have helped me. So I hope this does help you, and I hope you really see me as I'm sharing a little bit of myself with you, and I hope you're encouraged today.